All right, Braves fans, let's get rolling. I'm George McNair, and this is State of the Braves. The offseason, guys, is in full swing, especially now that the Texas Rangers have taken out the Arizona Diamondbacks in just 5 games. And Corey Seager definitely starred in that World Series, dominating as they win their first World Series ever. So congratulations to the Rangers. But, of course, as Braves fans, we are already focused on the offseason and what Alex Anthopoulos might do. So, guys, the point of this episode of State of the Braves is I'm going to try to give you what I would do as general manager of the Braves this offseason. So we'll see what you think. Definitely leave your comments and tell me what you would do, which guys you would target in this offseason. And we'll see if Alex Anthopoulos is listening, if he would laugh at my ideas, or maybe he will give me a call and offer me a job in the front office. I would probably consider taking that. So we won't hold our breath for that, but nonetheless, hopefully I will hit on some of the major things that the Braves are going to do this offseason. But again, I'm focused on not predicting what Anthopoulos will do, but more of just giving you guys an idea of what I would do this offseason. And if you've been listening to the last few episodes, some of these things won't shock you, but I'm trying to just package it all together as one solid strategy of how I would build the roster for the 2024 season. All right, so first I want to quickly jump into some Braves news, specifically what they have been doing to build their bullpen. And guys, if you've been following today, I mean, we really are in full swing. Multiple teams making moves today. A trade or two has already been made by other teams. So this is the time to talk about the offseason and what the Braves might do. But yeah, the Braves have already brought back 2 bullpen guys that were set to be free agents. So the first was the Braves re-signed Pierce Johnson earlier this week to a 2-year, $14.25 million contract with a $7 million option. Johnson is not super young. I mean, he's 33 years old, so basically this deal takes him through the remainder of his good years. Johnson, I do like him. I like this re-sign. He fits the bill of that high-velocity arm. You know, he's probably, by a lot of other teams, undervalued simply because he's basically had 2 bad seasons back-to-back, with one with San Diego and most of last year with Colorado before he came to the Braves. But once he got to Atlanta and out of that thin air, he definitely dominated, under a 1 ERA since he got to Atlanta. And before those 2 bad seasons, Johnson actually had 2 great seasons with the Padres. He's an older guy. He went to Japan for a year before he came back and had those 2 good seasons with the Padres. So a little bit of a weirder career for Johnson, but he lands with Atlanta. I'm sure he probably wanted to come back to the Braves. You know, once he got to Atlanta and had that success after struggling in Colorado, he probably feels like he found a place where he can continue to contribute to a good team and make some money doing it. So Pierce Johnson will be with the Braves at least 2 years, maybe 3 if he continues to pitch well. Definitely adds a high-quality righty to the mix. And when you're paying a guy like this, you kind of expect him to be a higher leverage arm for you. The other guy that the Braves brought back was Joe Jimenez. This is a steeper deal, 3 years, $26 million. And I'm kind of surprised. I'm surprised that they brought him back, and I'm surprised at the amount. So if you look at Jimenez and his numbers, they're good. I mean, on paper, it does make sense to bring him back. And just very briefly, right, he pitched 56 1/3 innings, had 73 strikeouts and only 14 walks in those innings. So that is great stuff. And yet, you know, if you watch the Braves, you do know that they really didn't trust him most of the year in high leverage innings. And so, you know, okay, those numbers look great, but a lot of times it's when the game is out of reach or you're crushing the other team, right? There's not a lot of high stress. So there's that. I'm not saying Jimenez can't be a really good pitcher for the Braves. It just kind of seems like there might be a slight disconnect between the front office, who clearly loves Jimenez. Remember, they gave up prospect Justin Henry Malloy to get him, and now they're giving him this big contract. So Anthopoulos is all in on Joe Jimenez. I don't know that Snitker was totally trusting him pretty much all year. It didn't seem like Snitker was putting his full faith in him. But nonetheless, he's back, and he's back for 3 years. I do hope, and I think the front office is hoping, that the best is yet to come for Joe Jimenez. Remember, he last offseason had back surgery, and so perhaps some of his struggles early in the year were due to that. And he really didn't struggle much after the first couple months. So that being said, Joe Jimenez and Pierce Johnson are fixtures in the Braves bullpen. Two hard throwers, two strikeout guys, and I do like that about both of them. So I think that with these two signings, it does make it far more unlikely that the options are going to be exercised on 3 other bullpen guys here in the few days leading up to. We've only got a couple days leading into the options deadline for teams. And so Brad Hand, Kirby Yates, and Colin McHugh all have options, and I think the Braves are likely to decline all 3. Now, it is possible that they could bring one or more of these guys back on shorter or smaller deals. But when you go through the Braves bullpen, it doesn't seem to be a lot of spots left over. So let me just go through that really quickly before I move on to what I think the Braves are going to do this offseason. So obviously significant money in 4 guys in the bullpen now. Iglesias, the Braves closer, who had another really good year. 2 more years of big money left for him. AJ Minter is going to make a nice chunk of change this year, but he's a free agent after 2024. AJ Minter is probably the biggest question mark, right? Will the Braves pony up more big money since they have just put a lot into Johnson and Jimenez? So again, Johnson and Jimenez probably are going to be with the Braves through 2026. And then the rest of the bullpen, it's Tyler Matzek coming back from Tommy John, and we hope that he's back to his full strength, and that would be such a huge lift to the bullpen. Dylan Lee struggled with arm issues last year. Hopefully he's fully back. Nick Anderson as well, arm issues. Hopefully he's coming back. And so all 3 of those guys at their best they're really good, and that probably gets all you guys excited about what the bullpen could look like, but there are some question marks, right, to those guys and what their performance is going to look like. And then you got Tonkin coming back. Obviously, basically a career minor league guy, but had a great year last year. I mean, comparatively great to what he'd done in the past. Hopefully he can give you some more good innings. And you got a couple other younger guys who could come up, like a Daysbel Hernandez. You got Huascar and Noah coming back from Tommy John as well. And might the Braves bring back Jesse Chavez on another minor league deal, right? So when you put all those names together, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of space for any other bullpen arms. So I do want to throw out one name that I would love the Braves to add back. And this is actually going to be probably a theme of this episode. You're going to hear several names of former Braves that I would like to bring back. And I don't want to only lean on those guys or only, romanticize the 2021 season. But I do think it matters when you've experienced certain guys who have a really positive impact, not only on the field, but in the clubhouse. So the number one guy for me, in the bullpen at least, is Luke Jackson. So Luke Jackson, I don't know how realistic this is now, again, since the Braves put so much money in these 2 bullpen guys at the beginning of the offseason here. Luke Jackson is making $6.5 million in 2024. He had a really good bounce back year after injury this year with the Giants. And then he has a $7 million option for 2025. It probably wouldn't take a whole lot to get him just because of that money. But would the Braves be willing to commit to him again? I don't know. But it's well known that Luke Jackson was one of the most popular Braves in the 2021 clubhouse, and I think it would be worth looking into for sure. So I just wanted to mention that. Again, that's not one of my top priorities, but I think looking at Luke Jackson could be interesting for the Braves. All right, so with seemingly the bullpen done for the Braves, and I think that's one reason why Anthopoulos jumped on these two guys so early. I think it mostly takes the bullpen off of the to-do list for the offseason. So I expect him to focus primarily on the starting rotation and maybe a little bit more as well on position players as well as we enter this offseason. And that's what I want to do. I want to focus in this episode primarily on those two pieces. So I want to give you my plan, and hopefully I'll present this, guys, in a very clear way, just step by step of what I would do. And then I want to, once I give you my top, I've got 7 big things to do this offseason. Then I want to give you what the roster would look like right at that point going into 2024. Ultimately, right, remember, I'm focusing on improving the starting staff and shifting clubhouse dynamics. And if you go back to some of my previous episodes talking about, not that I think there was any problems in the clubhouse, right? I think actually 2023 was a pretty positive group of guys who really enjoyed playing together, right? But I really want to add some guys with some hunger and some emotional intelligence in the dugout. I just think that's a must. And more than anything, I look back to that, Harper staring down Orlando Arcia and the Braves just doing nothing about it, right? And that, I think, probably encapsulates more than anything an issue that existed within this dynamic of the Braves for 2023. Maybe I'm making too much out of it, right? Maybe if Anthopoulos or other Braves officials, they might roll their eyes when they hear that, but I really think it matters. I think it's something not to blow too much out of proportion, but I do think it's a symptom of a slight weakness that existed in that Braves clubhouse. All right, so that being said, obviously more than just those dynamics, you got to bring talented guys on the field. And so let me go into it. All right, so my number one, and it's number one really just because of the calendar, but my number one is retain Charlie Morton. Hopefully he will not retire. I would really like the Braves to exercise that 1-year option on him for $20 million. Now, if they mutually decide to get that down to $15 million or whatever, cool, right? Save a few million, but regardless of what they spend, it would be nice to get 1 more year of Charlie Morton back. But I will say that my plan doesn't really change moving forward for the rest of this podcast. It doesn't really change whether Morton comes back or not. Now, if he does come back, I think one thing that it impacts a little bit more is Bryce Elder becomes more of a trade piece. And I honestly think, and you're going to see this in my plan, I actually think Bryce Elder should be a trade piece anyways. But I think it becomes that much more of a flexibility for the Braves to trade Elder if Morton comes back, because obviously your starting rotation is a little deeper. Okay, so my number 2 thing that I would do this offseason would be to sign Sonny Gray. So Sonny Gray, of course, coming off of a really good year with the Minnesota Twins. I think that signing Gray won't necessarily break the bank. Now, he's probably between a top 5 and a top 10 player on the free agent market this year. So you could have teams come in and really bid him up, and he could get out of the Braves price range. But I think Sonny Gray might be the type of player who is not only looking for the highest dollar amount in this contract that he signs. So I think he could be in that sweet spot. Multiple Braves have signed contracts with $22 million per year. And I think he could be kind of right around that number. He is from the Nashville area. I mentioned this on a previous episode. So he's from Braves country. This would get him closer to home. He's got young kids, a nice family. So you wonder how important that would be to him. It seems like it would be fairly important, kind of like a Charlie Morton situation there. And he has stated that he wants to play for a winner at this stage of his career. He's gotten to do that with Minnesota. He would be able to continue to do that, obviously, with the Braves. And if he's signing a 3 or 4 year deal, the Braves are going to be there and in the playoffs throughout his tenure. So it seems like a really good fit for the Braves and Sonny Gray. 33 years old, coming off of one of his best seasons, and obviously he would fill that much-needed third starter spot. And if Fried is to go after 2024, Sonny Gray is still very much a legit number 2 that you could pitch in the postseason and feel good about. So I think a 3-year deal for about $66 million is reasonable. Again, I think he could probably get more than that going somewhere else. It's just a matter of what Sonny Gray is looking for. Maybe you would give him a 4th year, team option for $20 million, something like that, as he's aging. But yeah, I think the Braves should absolutely go after Sonny Gray, and I think this is a really good and actually a pretty obvious fit for what the Braves need. My number 3 would be the trade for Dylan Cease. So Dylan Cease is a younger, I think he's 27 years old, younger pitcher for the White Sox. And so you're saying, well, you just signed Sonny Gray. You also want to trade for Dylan Cease? Yes. Okay, so I want to tackle the starting rotation issues, and I want to kind of like one-up what might seem to be, no, don't stop at Sonny Gray. Keep going with another really, really good pitcher in Dylan Cease. So he has 2 years of arbitration remaining on his contract. He'll make probably around $8 million next year. You might have a better chance of extending Dylan Cease because he's got 2 years left compared to some other pitchers out there who might also be available for trade. I'll get into more on that in a second. But so what I would do, and I think this is actually a reasonable trade offer, I would send Bryce Elder and Drew Hackenberg, who was a recent 2nd-round pick for the Braves. I would send those to the White Sox. Now, basically, Bryce Elder plus one good pitching prospect, I think probably would get Dylan Cease. Now, Cease is by far the better pitcher between him and Bryce Elder, but Elder has a lot of trade value right now, not just because he made the All-Star team last year, but Bryce Elder does have 7 years of team control under him, and a lot of teams are going to value that. It's very unlikely that the White Sox are going to re-sign Dylan Cease. They're not in win-now mode. So I think this is a possible trade partner with the White Sox. So Cease is from Georgia. He's from Braves country. So that's a positive in terms of maybe being able to extend him, but he is a Scott Boras client. So not sure how realistic it actually would be to extend him. That being said, right, even if you can't extend him, you still get 2 years of Dylan Cease in his prime. This guy was 2nd in the Cy Young voting, I think, in 2022. He has been very good. He had a little bit of a down year last year, but the White Sox were just bad. There's been a lot of issues with the clubhouse and management and all sorts of things. So you wonder how much that has affected him. But bring in Dylan Cease. Okay, not only do you have a murderer's row of a starting rotation at this point, but you have the 2 best mustaches in baseball. Okay, so between Dylan Cease and, of course, Spencer Strider. So let me just break it down again for you guys. In this scenario, you would have Max Fried for 1 more season. You'd have Spencer Strider through 2029. You'd have Sonny Gray through 2026 or 2027, Dylan Cease through 2025, unless you're able to extend him. And then you'd also have Charlie Morton for his final season, and that would make Charlie Morton your 5th starter, right? This is the kind of starting staff you can get behind. But, right, even if Charlie Morton retires and you have those 4, then, okay, bring in a Smith Shawver, or maybe you give Mike Soroka 1 more shot, or Hurston Waldrop can come up mid-season and be your 5th starter without all that much pressure on him, right? So you could kind of figure out your 5th starter even if Morton doesn't come back, and even if you trade away Bryce Elder. So that's my thought. And just as on the back burner, remember Ian Anderson and Kyle Wright will hopefully be back in 2025. Even though Fried will probably not be back. Of course, we can still hope that the Braves can figure out a way to extend Max Fried, but it does look less and less likely at this point. So that's my idea for the starting staff, and I think it creates a tremendous starting staff where I don't know if it's fair to say the starting rotation was the Braves' weakness all of last year, but in spurts it was, and certainly at the end of the year, it clearly was the weakness that probably more than anything kept them from really going as far as they wanted to go. Of course, we also know that suddenly the offense left us as well. But anyways, I think this is the clearest need that the Braves have, and these moves could certainly tackle that, and it would be probably the best starting rotation in baseball at that point. All right, so my next move for the offseason would be to not bring back Eddie Rosario. As much as I love Eddie, I feel like everybody is saying that right now, right? As much as we love Eddie and what he's done for the Braves, we wouldn't have a 2021 World Series without him. But yeah, I would not bring back Eddie. And here's who I would put in left field: Vaughn Grissom. Okay, you guys know I love Vaughn Grissom. I would make Vaughn Grissom the primary left fielder. Now, let me explain a couple things really quickly. Okay, so why not bring back Eddie? He was basically league average last year, making $9 million. That's not necessarily breaking the bank, but I think if you don't bring him back, that's $9 million you can save to put towards, obviously, more money towards the starting rotation. And I think Grissom can be better and can be better for a longer time. Obviously, he is a cheaper player that the Braves could put in left field, and he's a good hitter, right? So now, the Braves have, for the last 2 years, been dedicated to Vaughn Grissom being a middle infielder, and they continue to say that. And here's my take on that. I think having him in the middle infield and keeping him at AAA definitely kept his trade value high. And I don't know that that means that the Braves are actively looking to trade Vaughn Grissom, but I think they knew that they'd want to have him as a trade piece potentially for this offseason. So they've certainly done that. And so that might mean it's more likely than not Vaughn Grissom gets traded. But what I'm telling you is I wouldn't trade him. I would utilize him, a good hitter that you could put at the bottom of the order. He is an athletic guy who you can put in left field. I think his defense actually might play up. He's never played the outfield, but if you can put Ryan Klesko in left field, I definitely think you can put Vaughn Grissom in left field. So that's what I would do. I really like Grissom, and I like what he brings to the clubhouse as well. And again, you save basically $9 million by doing this. Also, keeping Grissom on the club really does bring you value. Like if Riley or Ozzie or Matt Olson were to get injured long term, having Grissom is really helpful. You could bring him back into the infield, and you can shift someone else to left field if needed. And I think there's less of upheaval if that were to happen. So I think there's a lot of value to having Vaughn Grissom on the club. And again, he's a cheap option for you for a long, long time. It's kind of connected to this. So my number 5 would be to sign Jock Peterson. You guys, most of us out there, we love Jock Peterson. Now, I'm viewing Jock as, at this point in his career, a part-time player. So I don't know how he views himself. Does he still want to go out there and try to get a starting job, or does he want to be a part of the Braves and try to go for another championship? So again, I view him as outfield and DH depth. He made $19 million last year. So some people might say he's way out of the Braves price range, but he only made $19 million because, number one, he had a really good first season with San Francisco, and then they kind of rolled the dice and offered him a qualifying offer, which he accepted. And that meant that he was making far more than he would have got on the free agent market last year. So to me, it was kind of a dumb decision by the Giants, but it means he really broke the bank last year. And then he ended up not having a very good year. So you're hoping that he does bounce back if he were to come to Atlanta. But there's no way he's going to make anywhere close to $19 million. I don't think he will cost a ton. I don't know what the market's going to look like for Jock, but could you maybe get 2 years, $12 million or $14 million for total for Jock Peterson. I think it's realistic, but again, it really comes down to what is he looking for. Would he go to a bad team and take a little more money to be their starting left fielder, or would he come to a team like the Braves? Certainly, he loved his time in Atlanta, and obviously, you think he's adding a lot to your clubhouse, so you know what he brings there. So I would bring back Jock. And while, again, it's not my top priority, and I'm not seeing Jock as an all-star anymore, I do think he brings a lot to the club. All right, my number 6 thing that I would do this offseason is trade Orlando Arcia and Marcell Ozuna together. I would package them together. Arcia has a decent amount of trade value, and Ozuna has actually still probably slightly negative trade value, but teams that are desperate for offense, I think, would target this type of deal. So $20 million combined would go with them. Obviously, Ozuna makes most of that. And Arcia, I've talked about this. I'm not anti-Marcell, or sorry, I'm not anti-Orlando Arcia, but I just think that these two are kind of a fun-loving, go-along, get-along kind of guys that ultimately I don't know if they add a ton to that killer instinct that you want in the postseason. And Arcia, of course, and again, I've talked about this, so I don't want to go too in depth, but he just played worse and worse as the season went on. He had a great first half. He earned being an all-star, but by the end of the season, he was basically what you would expect Arcia to be, right? He was kind of a fringe starting shortstop. And, he's making such little money that he still has a lot of value on the trade market. But I think the Braves could do better. So I would pair these two. I think you could get a solid return. And I'm not even going into detail of what you could get for them. But there's quite a few teams actually out there who need both a starting shortstop and they need a DH who could bring them some offense. Miami, Cleveland, Colorado, the White Sox. Maybe you could, if you're going for Dylan Cease, maybe you package a bigger deal with the White Sox to get a little bit more from them. But regardless of what you do, right, I think these two guys could go together. At this point, Nicky Lopez would be my starting shortstop. So, yes, it's probably weaker offense from Nicky, but Gold Glove caliber defense. And I went into this in an earlier episode, but basically, I think you could actually get more value on the field, especially obviously more defensive value from Nicky Lopez. Like if you're talking about higher WAR for 2024, I think a starting Nicky Lopez might actually give you more WAR than a starting Orlando Arcia. All right, so my last thing that I would do based off of these other moves would be I would sign Jorge Soler as my primary DH. Now, there could be some other guys out there, but obviously, Soler has done a lot for the Braves, and I think this makes a lot of sense as well. So I told you guys this was going to be a theme of the episode, and I really wasn't necessarily leaning hard this way before I started going down the list of everything I would do. But it does make a lot of sense to me. So I would give him about a 3-year, $50 million contract. That would be about $17 million per year. That's a raise from what he was getting with Miami. If a team swooped in and wanted to give him $20 million plus, maybe you're not able to sign Jorge, but I would think that he would want to come back to the Braves. And I know that there have been multiple reports that Anthopoulos has attempted to get him back in each of the last 2 trade deadlines. So I think the interest is still mutual. It's just a matter of right now it doesn't make sense if Ozuna is on your roster for Soler to come to you as well. So that's why after I would trade Arcia and Ozuna, I would look to sign Jorge Soler, bring back that quiet confidence that he brought to the Braves. So with all of these moves, it would add about $24 million to the payroll. Now, if Morton retires, you can subtract $20 million to that, right? So, monetarily, obviously it's some money, but it's not major money. So I don't know where the Braves obviously are at with their finances, other than I know they made a ton of money last year. They're rolling in it. So it's just a matter of if they want to increase payroll or not. So at the end of all of these moves, here's what the lineup would look like for the Braves. Acuna obviously leading off, Ozzie at second base, Riley batting third, Matt Olson at first base batting fourth, Jorge Soler fifth, Michael Harris sixth in center field, Murphy catching, Nicky Lopez at shortstop batting eighth, and Vaughn Grissom in left field batting ninth. Now, two other names I would say, if you guys don't like the Vaughn Grissom idea, that I also like and would be willing to consider would be Lane Thomas. So a trade for Lane Thomas, who's with the Nationals, or Lourdes Gurriel, who is a free agent after probably a career season that he had with the Diamondbacks. So those are two other left field names I think are possible. It's also possible that if the Braves are going to make a major deal with the White Sox for Dylan Cease, they would have to give up Vaughn Grissom. So, all of that is obviously fluid. Gurriel also, because he's a free agent, signing him is probably going to be fairly expensive. So that might mean going after somebody like Jorge Soler would be unrealistic, right? So one thing affects the other, but those are other names that are certainly out there the Braves might be interested in. The bench, so that's the starters, right? The bench, I would foresee Forrest Wall coming back as kind of your primary defensive outfielder, pinch runner. Again, I added Jock Peterson as kind of your big bat off the bench. Infielder, you might recall from a previous episode my idea to bring in Brandon Crawford, who is a free agent this year, of course, career with the Giants, as kind of your backup infielder, glue, clubhouse guy. And then, of course, we've got Travis d'Arnaud as well at catcher. And then the rotation, just to go through it one more time, Max Fried, Spencer Strider, Sonny Gray, Dylan Cease, and Charlie Morton. And then if Morton, if you traded away Elder and Morton retired, Lucas Giolito would be a possibility. I mentioned that. So he might be one that the Braves look at and I would be okay with as kind of a reclamation project. So with all this said, I doubt that Anthopoulos is going to be quite as bold as I'm being right here, right? I'm making quite a few moves with a team that won 104 games last year. But I'm really hoping that he has been bold in certain ways in going and, making a strength even greater of a strength. And he's done that with the catching, with the Braves catching. He's done that with the bullpen. Maybe he'll do that with the starting staff this offseason. That's what I'm certainly trying to do with my plans here. But if he were to do what I'm saying I would do, this would give one more year of an amazing starting staff with Max Fried and Charlie Morton. And then when they were to go in 2024, it would still leave you three great starters in place for 2025. And I think that's really important. And this plan also changes the clubhouse in, I think, kind of a tweak. It's a tweak. It's not extreme change, but I think it would bring a different team mentality when you think of the guys that I've added here. So guys, this is my plan, right? This is my plan for the 2024 off season. I'll be very interested to see if Anthopoulos might go. I would definitely doubt he will do everything I said, but I'm wondering if he might target some of the guys I've talked about. I really hope so. Again, probably my number one guy would be go out and get Sonny Gray, but some of these other guys like Dylan Cease, Jorge Soler, Jock Peterson, I think would be awesome to see all in Braves uniforms in 2024. All right, guys. Well, I hope you appreciated this episode of State of the Braves. I've appreciated being back with you, and I hope to talk to you later.